P1, P2, P3, P1, P2, P3, P1, P2, P3, P1, P2, 3, P4. The phenomenon of the solo superstar remains one of the most mesmerizing spectacles in the modern cultural landscape, a striking testament to individual ambition, transformative artistic vision, and the mysterious chemistry of public adulation. When we witness an artist standing entirely alone under the blinding glare of a stadium spotlight, commanding tens of thousands of voices with a single flick of their wrist, it is easy to fall into the illusion that their greatness was always an isolated force of nature. We look at these monumental figures as if they materialized fully formed from the ether of pure talent, destined from birth to hold the world in the palm of their hand. Yet if we peel back the layers of music history, we discover a much more complex, deeply human reality. Behind almost every solitary icon who has redefined the charts and achieved a state of singular reverence, there is almost always a collective past, a shared crucible where raw talent was first tested and shaped. The journey from the harmonious safety of a group dynamic to the high-stakes gamble of a solo career is one of the most dramatic narratives in the entertainment industry, filled with unvarnished ambition and the relentless pursuit of individual identity. It is a path walked only by the bravest creators. Because to step out of the shadow of a successful collective means risking everything on the singular wager that your own name is powerful enough to stand entirely alone. Consider for a moment the immense courage it takes to disrupt a formula that is already working on a massive global scale. When a musical group achieves fame, they establish a distinct brand, a collective sonic identity that audiences fall in love with, and a delicate internal equilibrium where each member serves as a vital pillar, supporting the weight of their shared success. For an individual within that group to look around at the screaming fans, the platinum records, and the financial security, and to decide that it is still not enough, requires a specific kind of artistic restlessness that borders on obsession. This is not merely about a desire for a larger share of the spotlight or a greater portion of the financial rewards, though human ambition certainly plays its undeniable part. Rather, it is an existential compulsion to discover who you truly are when the voices of your peers are completely silenced, and when the only creative instincts you have to rely on are your own. The history of modern music is littered with the remnants of those who attempted this perilous transition and found themselves swallowed by the vast, unforgiving void of public indifference. The public is notoriously fickle, often rejecting the solo efforts of group members because they cannot untangle the individual from the beloved collective tapestry. To successfully break away and surpass the achievements of your original ensemble is a rare, almost miraculous feat. As we begin this deep exploration into the fascinating mechanics of musical reinvention and individual triumph, it becomes absolutely essential to pause and invite you to become an active part of our growing community. If you find yourself captivated by the deep, hidden histories of the melodies that define your life, the extraordinary psychological journeys of world-class creators, and the intense dramas that unfold behind the velvet curtains of the global music industry, please take a quick moment right now to hit that subscribe button, turn on all notifications, and join us on this incredible storytelling journey. Your incredible support is the vital engine that allows us to dive deep into these complex cultural narratives, uncovering the grit, the sacrifice, and the sheer brilliance that shape the soundtrack of our world. By subscribing today, you ensure that you will never miss a single chapter of these deeply researched profiles. And you help us continue to bring these powerful stories of artistic evolution to light. When we look for the absolute gold standard of this profound evolutionary process, our eyes are inevitably drawn to a singular, generational force whose very name has become entirely synonymous with cultural dominance, artistic perfectionism, and unparalleled solo success. Today, she stands as a global institution, a multi-hyphenate visionary who moves the cultural needle with the mere announcement of a project, transforming the worlds of music, fashion, and visual storytelling according to her own uncompromising whim. She is an artist who has transcended the traditional boundaries of celebrity to become a living icon, studied in universities and revered by millions as an archetype of supreme individual power. And yet this monumental solo empire was built upon the foundations of a fiercely disciplined, wildly successful female collective that dominated the late 90s. Before she was the solitary queen ruling over a global empire of devoted followers, she was a young girl from Houston, Texas, singing in perfect, intricate harmony alongside her peers, navigating the intense pressures of teenage stardom. The story of her early group beginnings is not just a brief prologue to her current greatness, it was the ultimate training ground, a high-intensity crucible where her legendary work ethic was forged, her vocal prowess was sharpened to a razor edge, and her understanding of the global music business was deeply solidified. This captivating duality between the strength of the collective and the inevitable rise of the individual is a pattern that repeats itself across genres, eras, and generations, serving as the definitive blueprint for musical immortality. It invites us to play a fascinating mental game of connection and history, challenging our understanding of the music we listen to every day. We often sing along to the massive solo hits that dominate our radios and playlists without ever realizing that the voices singing them were once deeply embedded in entirely different sonic universes. Surrounded by bandmates whose names have since faded into the background of popular consciousness, it raises profound questions about the nature of talent and fame. Is greatness a collaborative spark that is accidentally sparked when the right individuals collide, or is it an innate, unstoppable individual force that merely uses the group structure as a temporary vehicle until it is mature enough to fly entirely on its own? As we stand on the threshold of this narrative journey, preparing to dissect the fragile lines that separate the historic bands of yesteryear from the monumental solo artists of today, we are forced to re-examine our own relationship with the music we love. We begin to look past the glitz of the solo stage to see the ghosts of the groups that came before, setting the stage for a dramatic revelation of how these extraordinary musicians managed to decouple themselves from their famous ensembles and rewrite the laws of global stardom. To truly grasp the staggering reality of what it means to separate oneself from a legendary ensemble, one must examine the hidden mechanics of the music industry that operate far beyond the view of casual listeners. When a band reaches the pinnacle of global success, it functions much like a highly specialized machine, where every single member represents an irreplaceable cog designed to produce a specific, unified sound. The shared history, the grueling early tours in cramped vans, and the collective hours spent in dim recording studios create a fierce, almost familial bond that defines the group's public identity. Yet, beneath the polished surface of platinum plaques and sold-out arena tours, a subtle and often agonizing friction begins to develop. For the natural-born soloist, a group structure can eventually begin to feel less like a collaborative sanctuary and more like a beautifully gilded prison. Every creative decision becomes a matter of diplomatic negotiation, every lyric must be approved by committee, and the unique sonic signature of the individual must constantly be diluted or compromised to preserve the sacred harmony of the collective brand. This structural suppression of individuality is the exact spark that has ignited some of the most dramatic fractures in cultural history, setting the stage for an intense psychological and professional gamble. Where the stakes are nothing less than total career survival, the tension begins quietly, often manifests as a slight shift in the visual arrangement of a band during live performances, or an undeniable concentration of media attention on a single charismatic figure. Producers and record executives possessing a sharp eye for marketability frequently begin to identify one particular member as the clear breakout star, whispering promises of total creative freedom and monumental solo wealth into their ear. This creates an immediate toxic imbalance within the ensemble, fueling deep-seated paranoias and unvoiced resentments among bandmates who have sacrificed just as much to achieve their shared dreams. Suddenly, the collaborative spirit that once defined their songwriting sessions evaporates, replaced by a cold, calculating atmosphere where every studio session feels like a battlefield. The artist who harbors solo ambitions must navigate this emotional minefield with extreme caution, well aware that a single premature move could destroy the group's current commercial viability while simultaneously alienating the core fan base that they will desperately need to leverage for their future individual endeavors. It is a period of intense isolation where the rising star is caught between two worlds, bound by legal contracts and personal loyalties to their past, yet completely consumed by a vision of a solitary future that they cannot yet fully grasp or execute. When the inevitable fracture finally occurs, the public reaction is rarely welcoming. It is almost always characterized by a profound sense of shock, betrayal, and intense skepticism. Audiences naturally form deep emotional attachments to bands, viewing them as permanent cultural fixtures, and they often view the departure of a lead singer or a standout musician as an act of supreme arrogance and selfishness. The media quickly sharpens its knives, launching endless debates about whether the rogue artist possesses the genuine substance required to sustain an entire album cycle without the support of their familiar musical anchors. The history of modern entertainment is a vast graveyard of solo projects that completely collapsed under the crushing weight of these impossible expectations. For every iconic breakout star who successfully redefines the cultural zeitgeist, there are dozens of immensely talented individuals who discovered, to their immense horror, that the magic they once possessed was entirely dependent on the specific, unrepeatable chemistry of their former bandmates. Deprived of the familiar rhythmic foundations, the distinct vocal harmonies, and the established songwriting partnerships that once masked their personal flaws, these artists frequently find themselves exposed on the solo stage, delivering uninspired, experimental works that fail to connect with both old fans and new audiences alike. The sheer difficulty of this transition becomes even more glaring when one realizes the immense physical and mental toll of carrying an entire global brand on a single pair of shoulders. In a traditional group dynamic, the burdens of celebrity are distributed among multiple individuals. If one member is having an exhausted night or experiencing a creative block, the others can step forward to carry the energy of the performance and shield them from the relentless glare of public scrutiny. The moment an artist steps onto the solo stage, however, that safety net is completely incinerated. Every single review, every ticket sale, every chart position, and every public misstep becomes a direct, unvarnished judgment of their personal worth and individual talent. They are no longer just a musician. They are the chief executive officer of a massive corporate enterprise that relies entirely on their face, their voice, and their continuous, flawless output. The constant pressure to constantly innovate, to maintain a flawless public image, and to outdo their own previous collective achievements can be utterly paralyzing, driving many artists to the brink of psychological collapse as they realize the terrifying scope of the isolation they have chosen. This high-stakes reality is precisely what makes the legacy of those rare individuals who actually managed to conquer the solo landscape so profoundly captivating to study. They did not merely survive the transition, they managed to orchestrate a complete cultural reset, rendering their monumental group pasts into mere footnotes of an even more spectacular individual history. To do this requires a ruthless willingness to completely shed one's former identity, to alienate a portion of the old fan base in order to capture a much larger, more diverse global audience, and to consistently deliver music that is so undeniably superior that it silences all criticism by its sheer quality alone. It is an act of supreme artistic reinvention that involves changing not just the music, but the fashion, the visual storytelling, and the entire public narrative surrounding their persona. As we begin to examine the specific cases of the 25 legendary musicians who took this terrifying leap into the unknown, the true depth of the tension and the sheer magnitude of the stakes become vividly clear. We are no longer just looking at a trivia challenge or a simple list of famous names. We are witnessing a series of defining, high-intensity moments where human ambition collided with destiny, forever altering the trajectory of popular culture and proving that sometimes the only way to achieve true immortality is to leave everything you know behind and stand entirely alone in the storm. When we look at the ultimate culmination of these dramatic journeys, the true core of this musical phenomenon stands fully revealed, illustrating that the transition from a famous group to a solo career is not merely a shift in business strategy, but a profound transformation of popular culture itself. This brings us back to the magnificent archetype of individual triumph, the extraordinary girl from Houston who emerged from the legendary ranks of Destiny's Child to become the incomparable Beyoncé. Her journey represents the perfect blueprint of how an artist can honor their collective origins while completely redefining the boundaries of global stardom. In the late 90s, Destiny's Child was a dominant vocal force delivering massive anthems that defined an entire generation. Yet, when she stepped out on her own with her debut solo project, she did not just release an album, she initiated a total cultural shift that would echo across the decades. Over the years, she evolved from a brilliant pop singer into a transcendent visual artist and a living symbol of empowerment, proving that her early group days were merely the foundational training ground for a much larger, historic destiny. Her path underscores the reality that true genius cannot be contained within a single collective framework, it demands a larger canvas. A solo stage where every single creative choice can resonate with absolute clarity and unfiltered power. But this grand narrative of liberation and reinvention extends far beyond a single iconic woman. echoing across the entire landscape of modern music and touching every single genre imaginable. Consider the incredible journey of a young man who once provided the vibrant, infectious heartbeat for one of the most successful boy bands of the late 90s. Surrounded by the synchronized ensemble that dominated the teen pop explosion, he possessed an innate, soulful charisma and an impeccable vocal range that simply could not be restricted by the rigid formulas of a manufactured group. When he finally made the high-stakes choice to step away and forge his own path, he did not merely match his past success, he completely transformed his sound, infusing his solo work with mature rhythm and blues influences that stunned critics and captivated an entirely new demographic of fans. By shedding the sanitized image of his boy band origins, he became a defining male pop icon of the 21st century, demonstrating that a solo career can offer a profound rebirth, allowing a hidden artist to finally show the world their true, unvarnished capabilities and establish a legacy that stands completely independent of their youthful beginnings. The exact same evolutionary pattern can be observed if we look backward into the classic eras of rock, soul, and pop history, where the most daring creators repeatedly broke the bonds of legendary bands to achieve an even higher state of cultural immortality. Think of the visionary lead singers who fronted the most electrifying rock bands of the 70s and 80s. Individuals whose stage presence was so overwhelmingly powerful that the rest of the band eventually became a backdrop to their singular energy. When these artists inevitably chose to walk alone, they often unleashed an entirely new wave of sonic experimentation, blending genres and challenging traditional musical conventions in ways their former bandmates would have never permitted. Similarly, the world of soul and Motown music was completely rewritten when individuals from family ensembles and tightly controlled vocal groups decided to reclaim their autonomy. These courageous creators stepped away from the structured uniform choreography and the safe commercial melodies to produce deeply personal, conscious, and sonically revolutionary masterpieces that continue to serve as the absolute holy grail of modern music production. Showing that the risk of solo experimentation is often the primary driver of artistic progress, this brings us to a fascinating realization about our own deep connection with these musical figures and the rich history they have woven into our collective lives. When we look at a list of 25 legendary musicians who made this exact leap, we are challenged to play a rapid, 90-second game of mental matchmaking, connecting the magnificent solo giants of today with the famous ensembles that first gave them a voice. It is a thrilling exercise in cultural memory that forces us to realize just how deeply interconnected our favorite songs truly are. We begin to see the hidden threads that link the stadium-filling solo acts of the present to the sweaty, crowded garage bands and local talent shows of the past. It makes us appreciate the incredible courage it takes for an artist to look at a guaranteed legacy with an established band and choose instead to start from zero, betting everything on their own name. This collective history matters because it proves that artistic growth is a continuous, often painful process of shedding old skin to make room for something greater, shifting our understanding of celebrity from a static state into a dynamic journey of survival and endless self-discovery. Now, as we reach the final chords of this sweeping narrative journey, the grand story of these individual icons invites us to look inward and examine our own deepest musical passions. It forces us to ask ourselves a truly profound and captivating question that lies at the very heart of our relationship with art and the creators who provide the soundtrack to our experiences. What is your absolute favorite band or music group of all time? And when you look closely at your playlist, is that legendary group actually the same as your favorite solo artist? The dynamic interplay between the power of a collective ensemble and the brilliant, solitary light of a breakout superstar is a beautiful contradiction that will continue to shape the entertainment industry for generations to come. Some listeners will always prefer the magical, unrepeatable chemistry that occurs when multiple distinct talents collide to create a single unified sound, while others will remain forever captivated by the unfiltered, uncompromising vision of the solo genius who answers to no one but their own muse. We want to hear exactly where you stand on this fascinating cultural divide, so please take a moment to share your thoughts, your favorite memories, and your answers in the comment section below. Keeping the conversation alive as we continue to celebrate the incredible melodies and the extraordinary human journeys that define the soundtrack of our world. As we look to the future, we can be certain that new groups will form. New stars will emerge, and the timeless cycle of unity and separation will continue to turn, bringing forth the next generation of musical pioneers who will dare to step into the spotlight alone. The stories of these 25 masters serve as an enduring testament to the fact that while a group can offer security, harmony, and a shared platform for early success, it is ultimately the solitary voice, speaking its own truth with absolute clarity, that has the unique power to echo through the halls of history forever.